All right, here we go. Welcome to End Times Moments, Episode 1, the chronology of Revelation and the absurdity of post-wrath rapturism. And we are going to get right into it. And so one could say that this is a continuation of my End Times Theology series that I've been doing now for months. You can find a playlist here. For example, if you go to End Times Theology series with Donny B, for fans of eschatology, all things eschatology, there is a ton available for you through this ministry. I specifically written a book here on the topic, End Times Revealed, Dawn of the Antichrist, and this is 311 pages. It is comprehensive. It is packed with information. I've had debates on this topic. I've had plenty of material put out on this topic for people to check out. So I recommend the book. I recommend the series. There's 22 videos in it currently, and it's getting lots of great feedback. I get a ton of emails from people with questions, with input. Many people who have informed me that because of this series, because of the book, they have rejected the pre-trib fraud, and they have now moved into the correct end times model, which is post-tribulation pre-wrath. And so in this series, you can find an End Times Theology open mic for almost 2 hours I did with Dr. Dino. You can find my formal debate here that I've done with J.D. Morin. I believe this series has accumulated roughly 30,000 views at this point. Actually, even more, much more than that, actually. So it's a blessing to see so many people are enjoying it and getting a lot from it. I've done a show almost 2.5 hours on dismantling dispensationalism, some impromptu discussions, an impromptu debate right here, post-trib pre-wrath versus post-wrath, Seventh-day Adventist eschatology. And I just put out a lengthy video, almost 2 hours, just yesterday, on Daniel 12:1 and those written in the book. And in that video, I critiqued Dr. Alan Kirshner, and I refuted his errors, his dispensational errors. You can find the associated article to that here. It is downloadable. The PDF is downloadable, and it's about 20 pages. So that you can find for free. You can find it over Patreon, or you can download the PDF, which I recommend. Now, since this is episode 1, technically, of this new End Times Moment series, this one's going to be a little bit longer than the rest because I did want to take a couple minutes there to kind of go over the different avenues for those interested in really digging deep on this topic. So why I'm doing an End Times Moment series now is because, as people know, when I do videos, oftentimes I'll be planning on, a 45-minute video and I go 2 hours, or I'll be planning a 30-minute video and I'll go an hour and a half. And so with all of the content, again, over 20 plus videos now, where you can find videos of, 2 hours, hour and a half, 2.5 hours, I want to now begin to add videos in this series that are shorter, more so right to the point and really, really focused. And these videos I am going to record and premiere, and therefore there won't be engagement in the live chat. But that's not to say I won't do comments on comments, as I have done those in the past. They're always fun. We get comments in the comment section of these videos, and so I like to go live and respond to those. So this series is going to be the End Times Moments, I guess you could say, sub-series within the greater End Times series. I am going to do probably 100 of these. I'm also working on part 2 of this book, End Times Revealed. This one's Dawn of the Antichrist. The next one's going to be The Wrath of God, where I specifically discuss the second half of Daniel's 70th week after the Great Tribulation when we're raptured. So I do talk about that in this book, but I want to talk about it in great detail. I get into Babylon, the millennial reign. I get into the new heavens and new earth, the trumpets, the vials, where they're placed essentially in the entirety of the end time scenario. And I refute the false post-wrath position, which I'm also going to touch on here. So there's going to be a ton within this sub-series, End Times Moments. I'm going to try and keep them 30 minutes or less. Some might be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. This one's probably going to be closer to 30 minutes, as I've already spent 5 minutes or so just going over the nature of the series, why I'm adding these types of videos to it. So I think it's important to have shorter ones that people can look to. You can pass around. I get specific questions on specific topics. So the more that I add to this series, the more accessible my content pertaining to eschatology is going to be for people just seeking answers to specific questions. They'll have shorter videos, 30 minutes or less, to study and to look at rather than 2-hour videos. And so we're just going to get right into it then. This one is going to cover the chronology of Revelation, as well as the absurdity of the post-wrath position. So anybody wondering, anybody new to this topic, you have several positions in end times. Okay. You have your pre-tribulation rapture position. Basically, your pre-tribulation rapturists argue for a rapture before the tribulation. You've got your post-tribulation pre-wrath rapturists. That's what I am, where you have a rapture after the tribulation, but before God's wrath. One could say it's a 6-seal rapture when the sun and moon go dark. And that is supported by ample amounts of scriptures. That is the most sophisticated model. And you also have another position. It's a post-wrath position. But those who hold to the post-wrath position, they will give lip service, you could say, to the post-tribulation model. But once you begin to talk to them, you realize that their model is just as sloppy and unscriptural as the pre-tribulation model, because they have the rapture essentially after the seals, after the trumpets, after the vials. The trumpets and the vials are the wrath of God, the judgment of God, and they have the rapture after this period. And so they are post-wrath. One could say they're post-trib, post-wrath, and that's a false position. And then you have just your really out there eschatological positions that are hard to take serious, although I do refute them extensively in this book. Amillennialism, post-millennialism, preterism, both partial and full. They are essentially indefensible positions. They're pretty wacky positions, you could say. And why I want to start off with the chronology of Revelation is because all of your false eschatological models, they rely on an argument that says Revelation is not really meant to be revealed. They'll argue there's no real chronology to Revelation. I heard one guy say, he's a post-wrather, he argued it like this. He said, basically, Revelation is broken down kind of like a movie where, the director and the filmmakers, they will film all the scenes out of order. And it's up to us, the editor and the filmmaking process to essentially figure out, which scene belongs where. I mean, when you argue that way for the book of Revelation, you could just make stuff up. And people who hold to post-wrathism, people who hold to amillennialism specifically, preterism, they have to argue that way, because understanding the basic chronology of the book of Revelation destroys all of those positions. And you're going to see why here. But again, these are shorter videos. So I've dismantled all your best objections, talking points, criticisms in my 20+ video plus my 311-page book. So please, if you want, a more comprehensive video on these specific topics, go check out those videos, because I go on and on and on, sometimes for 2-3 hours. But I'm going to have to leave a lot out in these shorter videos if I want to keep them roughly 30 minutes. Okay, so here we go. End times moments. And one thing I want to point out is that when it comes to the book of Revelation, we need to take the verses in this book. Again, Revelation means literally to be revealed. It's not meant to be confusing. Okay, it's those that have an unscriptural model that want to portray the book of Revelation as being confusing, not understandable. It is understandable, and God did this on purpose. Okay, that's why it's called the book of Revelation. It's to be revealed. And so we need to take verses in this important book on prophecy. We need to take them literal unless it's clearly symbolic, unless otherwise, basically. Okay, and this is very easy to do, and I've demonstrated this over the course of this ongoing series and in my book and articles. Okay, so if it's not clearly symbolic or metaphorical, specific verses, then we need to take it literal to be hermeneutically consistent. Hermeneutics, is just talking about Bible interpretations. Okay, so we want to be hermeneutically consistent. We don't want to just be making things up like a lot of these false eschatological positions. And so in Revelation, it's basically broken down where the book starts off with things that are seen, and then we have things that are, and then we have the things that will be. Okay, and what that means is you can see in Revelation 1, we start in 1st century AD with John on the Isle of Patmos. So the book of Revelation, it's very easy it's very similar to how the book of Daniel is broken up, where you can just split it right down the middle and you have two chronologies. And we know this because Revelation 12 brings us right back to 1st century AD. Revelation 11 is after God's wrath with the trumpets, and it is where the millennium begins. And so we go to Revelation 12, we're back in 1st century AD with the birth of Christ. Revelation 1, we're in 1st century AD with John on the Isle of Patmos. That's how we know. It's pretty basic, and it's not meant to be confusing. Only your proponents of false eschatological positions want to make it sound like it's confusing because they want to prop up their own ideas, their own conspiracies, their own theories. No, that's not how we interpret scripture. Okay, so we got chapters 2 and 3, though. They describe letters being sent out to the 7 churches in Asia. These are the 7 local churches that are in Asia, as in they exist at that time, in John's time, 1st century AD. These churches aren't representing different dispensations or ages. No, these were literal local churches made up of saints, made up of believers, and made up of Christians. Okay, assemblies of believers. That's what a church is. A church is a congregation. A church is an assembly. And so these 7 churches are not representing, 7 different ages or dispensations. They are literal local churches that existed during this time in 1st century AD. Then we have chapter 4, which begins the hereafter phase of the first chronology of Revelation. That's where John is taken up to see things that will be. Okay. And that's why chapters 1 to 3 have to do with things going on during John's day, in the day of John, one could say. And that's why it's hilarious when you have these, and I'll have a moment on this one. Revelation 4:1, your pre-tribulation rapturists want to say that's the rapture. One man being caught up in spirit, not even bodily, is supposed to represent the church, believers of all time. Basically, New Testament believers, Old Testament believers, all represented by one man being caught up spiritually in a trance to be shown what's going to happen in the future. Nothing that is representative of the rapture. And yet they want to claim that this is, the rapture. It's not even a trumpet sounding. It's a voice like a trumpet speaking to the volume of the voice when the voice says, come hither. But anyways, I'll have a moment on that. I've done a whole video on that. Okay, so anyways, then you have the tribulation starting in Revelation 6. Revelation 6 correlates perfectly with Matthew 24, where you have the events of the tribulation laid out, right? You got Antichrist going out to conquer. We see that with the first seal. And it's the Lamb that is worthy. It's the Lamb that can open the seals. But as each seal is open, or as each seal is broken in this scroll, what that means is more of the story is becoming discernible to us. We're more of the story is being revealed to John. And that's why you have, as each seal being broken, and more of the scroll being revealed, more of the story is now understandable. It's almost like you're watching a movie or a different, on Netflix, you can watch seasons of these shows. So it's almost like, each episode, as each episode ends, your next episode's revealing more of the story to you. And so with the first seal, you've got the Antichrist going forth to conquer. That matches up perfectly with Matthew 24 with false Christ and false Antichrist. You got world at war in the second seal, matches up perfectly with Matthew 24 when you have wars and rumors of wars. In the end times, those are rumors of wars and wars that are amplified. Okay, because the historicist wants to say, there's always been wars and rumors of wars. Yes, but during this time period, let's say leading up to World War III, one could say, it's going to be amplified. It's going to be a time of amplification. And then you have the ripple effect of war. We see it in Matthew 24. We see it in Revelation 6. Fits like a glove. You have famine, inflation, starvation, death, worldwide death. Okay, you have death in 1/4 of the earth in the fourth seal, and you have pestilences, you have disease. Okay, and then at the fifth seal, we see martyrs in heaven. This is essentially when the unholy trinity, this is when the dragon, the serpent, the devil, this is when he shifts his focus specifically to believers. And then we have in Matthew 24, we have the sun and moon being darkened after the tribulation of those days. That's when Jesus Christ comes in the clouds to gather together his elect. In Revelation 6, perfectly consistent, exactly what we would expect. After we have these same events laid out, we have what? The sun and moon go dark at the sixth seal. We have the Lamb of God. Okay, the men on the earth are hiding themselves from the wrath of the Lamb so they can see the Lamb, just like we see the Lamb in Matthew 24, Jesus Christ coming in the clouds. And lo and behold, the sun and moon go dark. Jesus Christ comes in the clouds to gather together the elect in Matthew 24. And then we have in Revelation 7, great multitude that no man can number, from all tongues, all nations, all peoples, all kindreds. The Bible's numbered some big numbers, but this is a number that no man can number. And this number, this great multitude, appears instantaneously before the throne. Obviously, the rapture. This is distinct from the 144,000. The 144,000 are resurrected Old Testament saints. They are sealed, and they are sealed for God's wrath period because they're going to act as a witness, and they need to be protected from God's wrath. Okay, so this flows perfectly. Then we have the start of God's wrath, chapter 8, where we've got the trumpets that come after the seals, because the seventh seal, this is why we have a chronology, after these things, then this, then that. It's a chronology. And it's a chronology because I've heard post-wrathers say things like, well, it's visions. So, John is basically saying, this is the next vision. After that vision, then I saw this vision. And that way they can, again, twist the text and say that everything's out of order and nothing belongs where it is. But no, that doesn't work, because when we interpret scripture with scripture and utilize sound and consistent and sophisticated biblical hermeneutics, what we see is a perfect match between Matthew 24 and the book of Revelation, because right after the sun and moon are darkened, we have Jesus Christ coming in the clouds to gather together his elect. Then Revelation 7, we see the great multitude that no man can number. So it's not a parenthetical. Even some people in my own pre-wrath camp, they say that Revelation 7's out of the chronology. No, it's not. You have the sun and moon darkened. In Matthew 24, Jesus Christ comes in the clouds to gather together his elect. The elect are on the earth. Revelation 7 sees that elect that are gathered together at the sun when the sun and moon go dark. We see them gathered together, but we see the picture in heaven. They're there before the throne. And the question is asked, where did these people come from? And the question is answered, out of great tribulation. And then what do you have after the sixth seal? You have the seventh seal when God's wrath begins in Revelation 8, and you have the seven angels with the seven trumpets preparing to sound the trumpets. So no, John is being seen visions, but those visions are based on a chronology. He's seeing the sun and moon go dark, and then he's seeing the great multitude appear in heaven, correlating perfectly with Matthew 24. But one thing you don't see in Matthew 24, since Matthew 24 ends when the tribulation ends, therefore everything after the tribulation of those days is no longer tribulation, because it's the wrath of God. And that is where we see in Revelation We see the trumpet and vial judgments, right? We see hail and fire cast upon the earth, mountain cast into the sea, burning star falls upon the rivers. We see smoke and locusts out of the bottomless pit. You don't see those things in Matthew 24. And so those that want to say Matthew 24 is talking about the battle in Armageddon, that doesn't work, because the battle in Armageddon is in Revelation 19, and the battle of Armageddon is after the seals, after the trumpets, after the vials. You don't see the events that comprise the trumpet and vial judgments. You don't see those in Matthew 24, because Matthew 24 is not talking about the wrath of God. It's talking about the tribulation, then the great tribulation, then the rapture. Okay, so what do we have? Revelation 8, the start of God's wrath. And it continues on until the millennium in Revelation 11. Then we have a restarting of the chronology, where in Revelation 12, we're back in 1st century AD, and lo and behold, people that reject this two-part chronology, it's all a big fat coincidence. I want to see a better model presented, because I have not seen a better model presented by the post-wrather, by the pre-tribulation rapturist, by the A-mill proponent, the post-mill proponent. No, you need to present a model that is consistent, that is clear, that has confirmed expectations. And I have not yet seen this presented. I just see a lot of twisting, and I see a lot of taking these scriptures and just basically turning them on their head, because this is not a big, giant coincidence. We have Revelation 13, the tribulation, the mark of the beast, the one world order, the one world religion, the Antichrist making war with the saints. And so that's what we see in Revelation 13. And so guess what? If the tribulation is seen in Revelation 6, then if what I am saying is true, what should we see in Revelation 13 or 14? That's right, the rapture. And what do we see? Revelation 14, we see one like the Son of Man, obviously Jesus Christ, coming in a white cloud. Doesn't that sound familiar? 1 Thessalonians 4, Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13. The Lamb is seen in a cloud with a sickle, and he is reaping the harvest of the earth. Obviously the rapture, and we also have the 144,000 that are sealed right before that, and then we have the start of God's wrath. What do we see in the first part chronology? The tribulation, the sun and moon darken, the sealing of the 144,000, the rapture, wrath. Second part chronology, tribulation, we got the 144,000 sealed, we got Jesus Christ in a white cloud reaping the harvest of the earth, and then the wrath period of God. Guys, this is amazing stuff. If this is your first time hearing this, open up the book of Revelation. It's not an extremely long read, and just read the whole book. Forget about all of your dispensational pre-tribulation rapture nonsense that you learned in Bible college or seminary, or all your books that you read. Forget about it. Read it with this understanding, and it is going to be like a light bulb going off. You're going to be enlightened. It's finally going to make sense. And then you have the wrath, and then eventually you have the battle in Armageddon, which is after all of this. This is when Jesus Christ comes on a white horse with us. He's bringing us. The rapture is us being taken. Jesus takes us. We're on the earth. Battle in Armageddon, which is after all of this, we're coming back with Jesus to battle the Antichrist, the false prophet, so on and so forth. That's when Satan is bound in hell for 1,000 years. That's why A-mill and post-mill are jokes. They're dumb, capital D. Sorry if that sounds mean, but it ignores the chronology. They want to say a lot of this stuff happened in 70 AD. Now, of course, there's shadow fulfillments, dual prophecy fulfillment, so on and so forth. Yes. But chronology-wise, that doesn't work. Basically, they have to say that all of these things have already happened. Your trumpets, your vials, hail and fire being cast upon the earth, smoke and locusts out of the pit. They have to say that Jesus Christ has already come in the clouds to gather together his elect. Yeah, I want to see documentation of that. So no, we're not in the millennium, or the millennium has not passed, because the millennium is not until after the battle in Armageddon. They have to say essentially there's been the Antichrist, there's been the false prophet, there's been the mark of the beast. I challenge anybody who's A-mill or post-mill or preterist, show me anywhere in history where a mark was instituted worldwide, and if anybody didn't take that mark, they'd be killed. They couldn't buy or sell. No, they can't present that stuff. The chronology refutes them. Okay, so you got Armageddon in 19, 20, you have the Great White Throne, 21, New Heaven and New Earth. So I want to focus here a little bit on Revelation 12. And so this is important because Revelation 12 is where we know the chronology restarts. And there's an ongoing debate on who the woman is. But who the woman is not a difficult question to answer. And I do get this question a lot. But Revelation 12 is where we go back to 1st century AD with the birth of Christ. We move into the tribulation, and then we move into the Great Tribulation in Revelation 13. And so a lot of people will say, the woman's Israel. The woman is Mary, the Virgin Mary. But no, both of those don't work. The woman is actually the woman in Revelation 12 here, right? There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. Remember when I said that we need to take the verses in the book of Revelation literal unless clearly symbolic? This is clearly symbolic. These people that hold to these really sloppy, unsophisticated models of eschatology, they'll say things like, oh, the book, it's apocalyptic literature, and it's all symbolic. It's full of symbolisms, metaphors, so on and so forth. And it's like they're only saying that because they have a view of eschatology that can't be defended, that doesn't match up to the scriptures, doesn't match up to what we know about reality, the real world. No, we can tell what is symbolic, and what is symbolic is often described to us as to what that means. Okay, and so here, for example, we have a woman clothed with the sun, obviously symbolic. Okay, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. There appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. We understand that this is obviously symbolic. We know the dragon is Satan, the serpent from the garden. Okay, so Revelation 12 represents Eve or humanity in general, and I'll explain why. Okay, firstly, we understand that Eve is the mother of all living, and Jesus Christ is the Son of Man. Jesus was born of a woman, the Virgin Mary. Now, what happened in Genesis 3? Well, when the Bible first prophesies of Jesus Christ, an amazing prophecy of Jesus Christ right in the book of Genesis, right in the early chapters of Genesis, Genesis 3 specifically, we see Jesus as being referred to as the seed of the woman who will what? Who will bruise the serpent's head, who will bruise the head of Satan, and he will only bruise his heel. So barely anything to basically destroy Satan. And Genesis 3 tells us that there is enmity between the serpent and the woman, but also enmity between the seed of the woman, who's Jesus Christ, and the serpent. Okay, guys, the devil hates all of humanity. It's always been a war against mankind in general. These Luciferians, these people that think they're going to rule and reign in hell with the devil, and the devil likes them, he's using them. He's using them as a means to accomplish his goal. That's why we see the end game, the final plan, the final battle, the final war against the saints in God in Revelation 13 during the Great Tribulation. Okay, and that's what we see in the world in general, is we see an attack on mankind with all of this, perversion, violence, murder, war, corruption. But with this in mind, guys, if you're looking at Revelation 12 here, we see a battle between the woman, and since we understand it's Eve, when you understand it's Eve, this makes sense, because we see a battle between the woman and the serpent, just like in Genesis 3. Right? And this is all symbolic, but these symbolisms are obvious because we have the devil who's persecuting mankind. What do we see in the first half of the tribulation? The beginning of sorrows. We see a general attack on mankind. And this correlates perfectly with Matthew 24, where we have Antichrist going out to conquer. Well, a shift in power of that magnitude always result in a war, World War I, World War II, and then an eventual World War III. That is general persecution on mankind. War affects everybody on the planet, and a World War III will affect everybody on the planet. And so that's what we see. We see a ripple effect of war, which is what? Death, inflation, pestilence, famine, starvation, death in 1/4 of the earth. So what we see is the serpent persecuting mankind. So the woman is Eve. She's the mother of all living, and therefore she represents humanity in general. And we have the serpent, who is what? He is persecuting the woman. He is persecuting mankind, all of man in general. But what do we see here? Mankind survives, and then the dragon begins to persecute, just like we see in the fifth seal with the martyrs that appear in heaven, which is at the midpoint of the week, the abomination of desolation. This is where his war, his all-out war, his endgame plan begins against the saints. This is the war of the saints. He shifts his focus. The unholy trinity, the false prophet, the dragon, the Antichrist, they shift their focus now to believers. This is where we see the mark of the beast, the one world government. And this makes sense because out of World War I, if you study your history, and I've studied these things quite extensively. Even before a Christian, I was just fascinated with where the world is heading. And once I realized that it correlates perfectly with the Bible, especially Revelation, then I understood this is the word of God, because these things were predicted thousands of years ago. And so out of World War I, what did you have? You had the League of Nations formed. Out of World War II, you have, out of crises, your elites, your globalists, they utilize that to further their plan. And that's where you get the League of Nations. World War II, you get the United Nations, which is the embryonic world government. And so logically, out of a third world war, you're not going to have the embryonic world government. You're going to have the actual world government. And that's what we see at the time of the abomination of desolation. Everybody gives their power to one man, the Antichrist. Remember, everything leading up to that is basically the Antichrist coming to power, and it's a general persecution on mankind. The devil is persecuting mankind, and he sets his sight on believers. We have this one world system, this beast system, this prison planet, with a focused persecution on a focused attack on believers. And that's why the Bible tells us this is when the great tribulation of those days begins. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. And so those days are shortened. And they are shortened because if they were not, no flesh would be saved. Because Christians could not survive or endure 3.5 years of this harsh persecution that begins at the midpoint of the week at the abomination of desolation. This is why the pre-tribulation rapture is false, is because firstly, we know that the rapture occurs 1,335 days into Daniel's 70th week, as per Daniel 12. We also know that Paul tells us, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, referring to the day of Christ, the rapture, that day can't come until first there come a falling away, and then that man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, the one who steps foot in the third temple, claims to be God. That's the abomination of desolation. So you don't have a rapture until sometime after the abomination of desolation. I'm sorry, pre-trib rapturous. Okay. And so this makes sense here, because what we see is a general persecution of mankind at the hands of the devil. And then he sets his sight on believers, those who keep the commandments of Jesus Christ, Christians. I recommend reading all of chapter 12. Okay. And this correlates perfectly with Revelation 6, the seals, Matthew 24. So we have an ongoing battle between the serpent and the woman, which is mankind in general, Eve, the mother of all living. Mankind survives, and then the dragon begins to persecute believers, which starts at the abomination of desolation. That means the woman is not the Virgin Mary, nor is it Israel, because we don't see the devil attacking Israel and Mary in the first half of the tribulation. As a matter of fact, at the abomination of desolation, Zechariah 14 tells us that God is the one. It says, I will bring the nations against Jerusalem to battle. And in Matthew 24, it says, there is wrath upon this people, speaking to God's wrath. We as believers endure the devil's wrath, tribulation, affliction, persecution. Okay. And so, no, this isn't Israel. This isn't the Virgin Mary, because it is mankind in general that is persecuted. And then it is believers that have a very focused persecution at the abomination of desolation. Okay. And so when it comes to that first half, that's the whole point of, let's say, going out to conquer and then world war. That's where you got famine, starvation, inflation, and worldwide debt. That's a ripple effect of a shift in power. where the Antichrist is coming to power, and then that full gaining of power after a world war. Okay, and then that's where you have the shift in focus. So here's basically the timeline. You got 3.5 years of tribulation, but you've got the abomination of desolation right here with the Great Tribulation. Okay, so these are the beginning of sorrows: Antichrist, world war, food famine, death of 25%. This is what I was saying. You've got the Great Tribulation, okay, which is a subset of the tribulation. And you've got the abomination of desolation, the mark of the beast. This all here, this is a general persecution of mankind. Within mankind are believers. So believers are being persecuted and enduring tribulation. But at the Great Tribulation, the focus has been shifted to believers. This is now the unholy trinity's, this is their end game. And then you have the rapture at the sixth seal, second coming of Jesus Christ. 1 Thessalonians 4 defines the rapture as the coming of the Lord. It's not coming 1.5, it's the second coming. And then you have your trumpets and your vials. Revelation 8 starts your first trumpet. Okay, and there's simultaneous judgments. That's why you see, you know, trumpet one, vial one is earth. You could picture the angel with a trumpet in one hand, a bowl in the other, a vial in the other, basically. And it's simultaneous judgments. I'll have a whole video on that in the future. You got earth, sea, rivers, sun, you know, dark, Euphrates, thunder. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. So let's move on here. Here's the timeline. Again, I'm going to do a whole video on just the timeline in general. The 1260 days, the 1290, the 42 months, the times, and the dividing of times, the 3.5 years. And, you know, God spelled it out this way just to refute the historicists. You got historicism, where they want to say that, you know, the 1260 days is actually years. Oh, really? Because 1260 equals 3.5 years. And then we understand that the Bible correlates 1260 with times, and half a times. We've got the Antichrist continuing in power for 42 months. So we have days, we have years, we have months. God did this on purpose just to say, no, historicists, this is to be taken as literal days, because 1260 correlates with 3.5 years, correlates with 42 months. And we're given 3.5 years, 42 months, 1260 days, 1290 days, 1335. None of them are more than 7 years, because they are all periods within the 7-year period of Daniel's 70th week that give us more details. Okay, so now this is going to be the last portion of this moment. So this is my moments will be longer than, you know, your typical 10-minute moments, but nonetheless shorter than other videos. So here we go. The Great Day of His Wrath, post-wrathism. It is extremely easy to refute. I've had many impromptu discussions with post-wrathers, and they can't answer the challenges. The challenges to the post-wrath position actually preclude the post-wrath position from being true. There's preclusionary data. And what that means is, if you have a model, but there's a challenge or a point or an argument that model can't explain, like there's no way to explain it, that precludes that model from being true. And so I just had an impromptu debate with a post-wrath Seventh-day Adventist. And I pointed out, I had him read these verses in Revelation 6, 7, and 8. And he admitted, yeah, this is a problem. And I've had previous discussions with him, and he always says the same thing. Well, I got to look into it. Yes, this is a problem. Always an excuse, right? Which is fine, because somebody like him, he's holding on to a position that's just, it's indefensible. And so either every time you're challenged on it, you're going to have to say, well, I got to look into it. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't have an answer. Or you just tap out and realize, no, post-wrathism is false. Okay, so notice this. And we're going to run through this fairly quickly. Revelation 6, the tribulation with your first 6 seals. The 6th seal, the sun and moon are darkened. Notice this. You got the wrath of the Lamb in verse 16. Correlates perfectly with Jesus Christ coming in the clouds in Matthew 24, Luke 20, Mark 13. And then you've got Revelation 17. Revelation 6, verse 17. For the great day of his wrath is come, has come, it's now here. So everything before this isn't God's wrath, it's tribulation. Everything after this is now something different than tribulation. It's God's wrath period. So then you go to Revelation 7. Notice this. And after these things, after what things? After the sun and moon went dark. This isn't just like a totally separate event. There's no chronology here. This actually represents something, way over here during the trumpets. No, after these things. This is right after. It's right in your face, guys. This is right after Revelation 6. The great day of his wrath has come. Sun and moon went dark after the tribulation of those days. And now we see what? After these things, this is Revelation 7, where the great multitude appear in heaven. And what is the angel saying? Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, until we have the servants of our God sealed, 144,000. Well, wait a minute. If the trumpets and vials came before the rapture, came before the sun and moon go dark, well, show me how it's possible to have hail and fire cast upon the earth if the angel is saying here after Revelation 6, don't hurt the earth, don't hurt the sea, don't hurt the trees until we do this. That means the earth, the sea, and the trees haven't been hurt yet, but the post-wrath position is such a joke, so unscriptural, that they have to say, well, yeah, hail and fire have been cast upon the earth, even though the earth, sea, and trees haven't even been hurt yet, because they don't start to being hurt through God's supernatural wrath until the trumpets. Notice how your seals leading up to the sun and moon going dark, 7th seal, the wrath begins. They're not necessarily supernatural. They're a ripple effect of the Antichrist going out to conquer, a ripple effect of what's going on the earth, a ripple effect of war. But your trumpets and vials, on the other hand, they are supernatural. Okay, so notice Revelation 7, right? After these things, and the angel saying, don't hurt the tree yet. We're waiting for God's wrath. It's here, but there's silence. And so what happens after this? So notice this. After these things, this happens. Then after this is a chronology, guys. I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man can number, of all nations, all kindreds, all people, all tongues, stood before the throne. This is because the rapture comprises all believers of all time, and people have believed on Jesus Christ from all tongues and all nations. And these are people that came right out of Great Tribulation. We just read about the Great Tribulation in Revelation 6, Revelation 7. We now have the great multitude appearing in heaven. What do we have in Revelation 8? Notice this. This right here is a fatal blow to post-wrathism, this unscriptural SDA eschatology. And if you're not SDA and you hold to post-wrathism, reject it. Like right now, reject it. Convert to the pre-wrath model. It's the biblical position. Notice this. And when he had opened the seventh seal. So before the seventh seal is what? Seal 6, which is when the sun and moon go dark. The 5th seal, martyrs appear in heaven. The 4th seal, death in 1/4 of the earth, worldwide death. Then we've got the 3rd seal, famine and starvation. 2nd seal, world at war. 1st seal, Antichrist goes to conquer. He opens the 7th seal, which is the start of God's wrath. There's silence in heaven. This is a chronology, guys. You can't get your trumpets before the seals or during the seals happening simultaneously or before the rapture. No. Any way you look at it, even if you want to say, well, these are visions. So when it says after these things, it's just a new vision. And this new vision is, way over here out of sequence. No, it doesn't work because we have now the 7th seal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Think of it this way. STV. Seals, trumpets, vials. But the trumpets and vials are happening simultaneously, okay? So you have the 7th seal open. And now notice this. And I saw the 7 angels. Let me repeat that. And I saw the 7 angels. So you have the 7 seals. And now we have 7 angels that are standing before God. And to them we're given what? 7 trumpets. So now the 7 seals are done. There's silence in heaven. This is the start of God's wrath. And now we have 7 angels with 7 trumpets. So what does that mean? We had the first 6 seals. And then we had the sun and moon go dark, great multitude appear in heaven, which is the rapture. I've heard these both post-wrathers say, oh, well, okay, the rapture could be when the sun and moon go dark. And then God, but no, actually, no, they won't say that. They'll say that believers are here during God's wrath period on this earth, but they're protected, right? They'll say something like, well, Noah was protected during the flood. Well, Noah was taken away from the flood. He was in the ark. and nothing was going to prevent him from being saved, basically. Okay, or Sodom and Gomorrah. No, they took Lot out of Sodom. He left Sodom. So they'll try and say, oh, believers will be on earth, but they'll be protected basically from the trumpets and vials. No, that doesn't work, because Revelation 7, they're in heaven. They don't need to be protected on this earth. The 144,000 Old Testament resurrected saints, yeah, they're placed on this earth to act as a witness, but the great multitude that no man can number, they're believers, they're raptured, they're in heaven, they're safe. So why in the world would you say that believers, now obviously people will get saved during God's wrath, because you have the 2 witnesses with a local ministry, the 144,000 with a worldwide ministry on the earth, soul winning, evangelizing, preaching the gospel. He that winneth souls is wise, and God never leaves this world without a witness. Okay? So no, that doesn't work, because believers, saints, that's why you don't see the saints mentioned here until Revelation 19, because the saints are gone. The saints are seen in Revelation 13 in the tribulation. Then Jesus Christ comes on a white cloud to reap the harvest of the earth. And then we have the great multitude appearing in heaven in Revelation 7. 7 is the rapture, 14 is the rapture. They're in heaven. They don't need to be protected post-wrath, or you don't need to just make stuff up. They're not on this earth. They're in heaven. And now we have the start of God's wrath, where you have 7 angels standing before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So you have 7 seals and now 7 trumpets. So the trumpets come after the seals. The trumpets come after the seals. The trumpets come after the sun and moon going dark. The trumpets come after the great multitude appear in heaven. The great multitude represents the rapture, and that means believers are in heaven. They're not on the earth. This is clear. This is basic. This is like watching your favorite movie trilogy: Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, The Two Tower, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Don't try and say that major events in Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, which is the 3rd part of that amazing trilogy, don't try and say that those events occur somewhere before The Two Towers. No, The Two Towers is part 2, and then The Return of the King comes after The Two Towers. There is a clear chronology. And right here we see Revelation 8 bringing the story into a new phase. And this is the phase of God's wrath. The opening of the 7th seal is characterized by the 7 angels being given 7 trumpets. This means the trumpets come after the seals. And notice this, it's even worse for the post-wrath position. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets, what? They prepared themselves to sound. They haven't been sounded yet, and the angels are preparing to sound them after the seals. The 7 seals are done. They're a thing of the past. Get over it, post-wrather. You got to get over the seals now. We're now dealing with the trumpets, and the angels are preparing to sound the trumpets, and it's after the seals. The tribulation's done. The sun and moon went dark. The great multitudes in heaven, the 144,000 are now on this earth. That's why we see them in Revelation 9 when it comes to the locusts. And the locusts are commanded to hurt every man except for the 144,000, because they're sealed, they're protected, they're on this earth. Okay, but the great multitude are in heaven, safely waiting their return with Christ for the battle in Armageddon in Revelation 19. And then notice this: the first angel sounded. So the 7 seals are done. The 7 trumpets are being prepared to sound. And Revelation 8, verses 7, the first angel is now sounding. And what do we have? Hail and fire mingled with blood. Do you see how this fits like a glove? Earlier in Revelation 7, the angel was saying, hurt not the earth, hurt not the sea, hurt not the grass, until the servants of our God are sealed. The servants of our God are now sealed, and now the angel sounds. This is God's wrath period. This is why we don't see hail and fire mingled with blood cast upon the earth, where the 3rd part of the trees are burnt up and all the green grass is burnt up. We don't see that in Matthew 24, because Matthew 24 ends with the rapture. This is everything after the rapture. The first event that takes place when the first trumpet is sounded is hail and fire being cast upon the earth. 3rd part of the trees burnt up and all the grass burnt up. Notice this, Revelation 15. Remember, this is the 2nd part of the 2-part chronology, where you have tribulation in Revelation 6, rapture in Revelation 7, and then God's wrath after that. The 2nd part chronology, you've got tribulation in Revelation 13, rapture in Revelation 14, when Jesus Christ comes on a white cloud to reap the harvest of the earth. And then in Revelation 15, we have what? God's wrath. And notice how it says the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. Post-wrathers, you have believers on this earth for the wrath of God. We're not appointed unto wrath. We are appointed unto affliction, unto persecution and tribulation, but we're not appointed unto wrath. And notice how it says the 7 last plagues. That is because you had your 7 seals prior to that. And your 7th seal was when the wrath of God began, silence in heaven. And everything before that was what? Sun and moon went dark. And then your ripple effect of Antichrist going out to conquer. Okay. So it fits like a glove. Revelation 9 is where we see, as I was pointing out, is where we see the 144,000. Notice this. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. These are the only saints that we see on this earth during God's wrath period. It's 144,000 that are sealed in the heavenly, on the heavenly Mount Zion with Jesus Christ. They're the only ones that can learn the song that the angels are singing. Everything about that scene is before the throne. They're Old Testament resurrected saints put onto this earth. They are saints from all of the tribes of Israel, 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. They're here during God's wrath period, but they're immune to God's wrath. Okay. So notice this, the 5th trumpet judgment comes after the 144,000 are sealed. And the 144,000 are sealed between the 6th and 7th seals, which is after the tribulation, after the sun and moon are darkened, and after the rapture. The post-wrather is basically saying you have the 144,000 that are sealed. Okay, but apparently believers are still here, but the 144,000 are sealed right before the rapture, but the rapture doesn't happen until way after the trumpets and vials. So what is the point of the 144,000 even being on the earth in Revelation 9? Because their whole mission or job is to act as a witness on this earth, to be sealed from God's wrath. But according to the post-wrather, the rapture doesn't happen until after the trumpets. So why are the 144,000 on this earth in Revelation 9 if they were sealed in heaven in Revelation 7 and Revelation 14, right before the rapture? I mean, this is what I mean. The post-wrath position is just as bad as the pre-trib position. The 144,000 are sealed after the tribulation and therefore do not exist within the tribulation and the seals. The trumpets do not happen before the rapture. The trumpets and seals are not happening at the same time. Trumpets come after the seals, and trumpets come after the great multitude appear in heaven. Trumpets come after the sun and moon going dark. There's a 2-part chronology, guys. The post-wrath position makes no sense. The pre-trib position makes no sense. The biblical position of end times theology, of last days theology, is the post-tribulation, pre-wrath rapture. Anything after the 6th seal is not the tribulation, which is why the last time we see the word tribulation used in Revelation is in Revelation 7, when they came out of great tribulation. And Matthew 24 says, after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and then shall we see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds to gather together the elect. The elect are believers, but we don't see the trumpet and vial judgments in Matthew 24 because they don't occur until after the sun and moon go dark, after Jesus Christ comes in the clouds, after the rapture. If you want to read about God's wrath period, you're supposed to read the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation means literally to be revealed. And so it's funny because your pre-trib rapturists, they want to say, well, the pre-tribulation rapture is true because we're not appointed unto wrath. And that's true. 1 Thessalonians 5:9 refutes the post-wrath position. For God hath not appointed us to wrath, because to the believer, we're born again, we're justified, we're regenerated, we're predestined for glorification. There is no future tense condemnation or wrath for the believer. Okay. But 1 Thessalonians 3, the pre-tribbers forget to read this, that no man should be moved by these what? Afflictions. Affliction is used in Mark 13. It's used interchangeably with the word tribulation because it talks about affliction in Mark 13, but it talks about tribulation in Matthew 24. It also talks about trouble in Daniel 12:1. Trouble, affliction, persecution, tribulation, they're all used interchangeably. Okay, for verily, when we were with you, we told you before that we should, notice this, believers will suffer tribulation. But notice, 1 Thessalonians 3 is right before the famous rapture passage in 1 Thessalonians 4, and 1 Thessalonians 5 is right after the famous rapture passage that is in 1 Thessalonians 4. So 1 Thessalonians 5 says we're not appointed unto wrath. 1 Thessalonians 3 says we are appointed unto afflictions and we should suffer tribulation. But we have the rapture right in between these verses. Why? Because the rapture is post-tribulation, 1 Thessalonians 3, pre-wrath, 1 Thessalonians 4 or 5, with the rapture right in the middle, 1 Thessalonians 4. Notice Matthew 24, for then shall be great tribulation. Mark 13, for in those days shall be affliction. They're used interchangeably. For God hath not appointed us to wrath. And as I wrap up here, here's the last thing I want to touch on. So you can see it's been right to the point and still almost an hour. So there's a long moment for you, but this one's going to be longer than most. Okay, so just read it yourself. Go pull it up, guys, and you'll see. Revelation 6. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, right? Open the second seal. I'm going to go through this quickly. Third seal. Fourth seal. It's a chronology. This is easy. Okay, you get to the end, you get to the sixth seal, and what do you have? Sixth seal, sun and moon go dark. Stars fall from heaven, correlating perfectly with Matthew 24. And then you have what? The wrath of the Lamb. The Lamb is there, just like he's there in Matthew 24. The great day of his wrath is come. It's now here. That means all of this, believe it or not wrath. Boom, go to the next. Revelation 7. And after these things, after what things? After what we just read about. Sun and moon went dark. After the tribulation, with your first six seals. Wrath of the Lamb. Great day of his wrath is come. And then what do we have? And I saw another angel ascending from the east. Okay, hurt not the earth, neither the sea. We've touched on that. 144,000 are sealed, just like we see the 144,000 are sealed in Revelation 14, the second chronology. And after this, a great multitude that no man could number. Fits perfectly. Great day of his wrath is here. The elect are now in heaven. In Matthew 24, they're on earth. They're being gathered together. Okay, so then you go to Revelation 8. And when he had opened the seventh seal, so we had the sixth seal open, sun and moon went dark. The Lamb is present. Revelation 7 gives us the picture of the rapture in heaven after the sun and moon went dark. That was all the sixth seal. Now we're on to the seventh seal. So this isn't just jumping everywhere. We've now gone sixth seal, all the events between the sixth and seventh seal, which is basically your great multitude appearing in heaven. Before that, the 144,000 are sealed, which makes sense because we're raptured, but the 144,000 need to be ready to go to be put onto this earth for God's wrath. And that's why the angel even says, don't start the wrath yet. Don't hurt the earth, the sea, the grass. Not yet. Not until the servants of our God are sealed in their foreheads. Then you can start blowing the trumpets. And so what do we see? Silence in heaven. And then we've got, and the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded. Boom. The second angel, guys, it's flabbergasting. You know, I do spend a lot of time. My main focus is putting forth or coming up with a strong separate ancestry model. So I spend a lot of time studying genetics, biology, and countering the universal common ancestry model, right? I've done 100 formal debates on many different topics, but mostly separate ancestry. And some of this genetics and biology stuff, it's technical. It's technical. Guys, when you're reading this, it's straightforward. God wrote it that we can understand this. And so when I read it, when you read it, you should understand it. Don't just blindly believe what pre-trib teachers are teaching you or your favorite SDA teacher is teaching you. No, this is easy to understand. This is not difficult. It literally means to be revealed. Yes, we have symbolisms, which I covered in Revelation 12. But even when you see the symbolisms, they're easy to understand what they mean. Okay. But when it comes to the verses that are just meant to be taken as literal, then take them as literal. And that's why you have seven seals. And now you have seven trumpets. And the seven angels, they're preparing to sound. Second angel, third angel, fourth angel. Go to the next one. Revelation 9. Fifth angel sounded. right? Star fell from heaven. Sixth angel, which had the trumpet, and just read it all the way through. Okay, Revelation 10, and then you can go right down to Revelation 11. Okay, right here. And the seventh angel sounded. So 7 trumpet, and there was great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And then you restart the chronology in Revelation 12. We talked about the woman. You go into the great tribulation. Okay, Antichrist speaking great things and blasphemies, war against the saints, and then boom, you go into Revelation 14. We would predict 144,000 should be sealed here, if this is true, what I'm saying, and boom, this is exactly what we have, 144,000. And then you keep going down, they get sealed, and then what do we get? We get the picture of the rapture with Revelation 14, and Jesus Christ comes on a white cloud to reap the harvest of the earth. And right after that, what do we have? The wrath of God. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud. And upon the cloud, one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And what did he do? Thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he sat on the cloud, thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Correlates perfectly with Revelation 6 and 7, with the great multitude. Correlates perfectly with Matthew 24, where Jesus reaps the harvest of the earth, gathers together his elect. And then what do we see here? And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire. Notice now we're into God's wrath, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in thy sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it in, notice this, into the great winepress of the wrath of God. This is now the wrath. The tribulation's over. Jesus Christ has reaped the harvest of the earth. The 144 sealed, or 144,000 are sealed. They're ready to act as a witness on this earth. And now God's wrath begins. The 7 last plagues. And in them is filled up the wrath of God. So there we go, guys. That I went through that really, really quickly. Another thing on my endless to-do list. Okay, so if you appreciate all this content on so many different topics and you want to help support this ministry and keep this going, keep these videos coming out, feel free. You know, you guys are the life and blood of this channel, and we greatly appreciate all the support and the gifts, the donations to keep Standing For Truth Ministries going full time, and therefore putting out full-time content. So I do plan on doing just a chapter by chapter Bible study where I go through the entire book of Revelation, verse by verse. That's going to be a lot of work, take some time to prepare, but that's definitely on the list. So with that, guys, End Times Moments 1, the chronology of Revelation and the absurdity of post-wrath rapturism. God bless. Stay tuned for episode